Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching Today I Found Out, and in the video today we're answering a viewer question. Mark asks, are there any known animals other than humans that intentionally commit suicide? Animal suicide is a hugely controversial issue in the world of animal research and psychology because although there are numerous documented instances of animals seemingly intentionally ending their own lives, no one is exactly sure whether these cases can technically be classified as suicide. Now, first of all, we should note that the most famous suicidal animal of all, lemmings, do not actually throw themselves off cliffs when they migrate. As we've already mentioned in a previous video, no one is exactly sure where the myth originated from, but we can thank Disney for making it common knowledge when they used a turntable to throw dozens of them into a river and then filmed the results for an Academy Award-winning documentary called White Wilderness. So now you might be wondering, well, why did they intentionally kill lemmings in this way? Well, that's because it was thought at the time that lemmings did this, and the filmmakers, they needed a video of it. You can actually learn more about the truth of the situation concerning lemmings by watching the video that we're linking to in the description below. And moving on, there are numerous cases from history of animals seemingly killing themselves for no explainable reason. Perhaps the most famous is the curious case of Overtone Bridge. In a nutshell, since the 1960s, dozens, or hundreds depending on the source you consult, of dogs have leapt off the bridge to their doom for no discernible reason. While the exact number of dogs who've plummeted to their deaths isn't known, the phenomenon has been widely covered and written about for years. It wasn't until an animal behavioral specialist, David Sands, investigated the bridge that the mystery was finally solved. Sands discovered that the end of the bridge most favored by dogs seeking to end it all just so happened to be above a known nesting ground for mink. Sands also discovered that the majority of known dogs that had made the leap were long-snouted breeds known for their extraordinary sense of smell. Putting these two facts together, Sands was able to conclude that the dogs weren't committing suicide at all, rather they were excited by the smell of small furry creatures and tragically leapt over the safety wall, which is above the sightline of most dogs, not realizing they were standing on a bridge. In yet another apparent dog suicide attempt, often used as an example that dogs are capable of the level of abstract thinking necessary to be able to contemplate ending it all, we have the incredible story reported in the Illustrated London News in 1845 about a Newfoundland dog that supposedly repeatedly threw itself into the water and refused to move until it drowned. The dog was rescued several times throughout this, but every time it was rescued, it would return to the water and apparently attempt to drown itself by not moving. As amazing as that story is, how accurate it is and the events surrounding the apparent suicide have been lost to history. If this one dog was capable of it, one would think there would be numerous other irrefutable dog suicide attempt stories just like it. The closest we have today is the phenomenon of dogs that will sometimes refuse to eat after losing their masters, which does, in rare cases, cause the dog to die. But the question still remains in these cases, is the dog refusing to eat so that it will die, or is it just refusing to eat because it's sad and has no appetite, as can happen with humans? The question is still there of whether the dog realizes the potential consequences. In an article about the strange world of supposed animal suicide, Live Science contributor Catherine Gammon summed up the key point nicely. For an act to be classified as suicide, the agent must know that what it is doing will end its life. Of course, it's nearly impossible to ever tell if any non-human animal knows its actions will result in its own death and performs the actions towards that end. That said, there are several types of insects who willingly allow themselves to be killed, or even in a few cases, do the deed themselves. For instance, it has been noted that some species of ants possess the ability to explode themselves at will when threatened, often emitting some sticky or poisonous substance in the process, which has earned them the apt nickname exploding ants. However, even if the ants realize what will happen in terms of their own existence when they perform this selfless act, most would not classify this as suicide any more than a soldier leaping onto a grenade to save surrounding soldiers. The ant is simply sacrificing itself for the greater good because, as a species, it's evolved to put the needs of the many before the needs of the individual. The Pharelius pusillus ant also has worker ants that will sacrifice themselves for the good of the colony, but they do it in a slightly different manner than the exploding ant. Every night, the nest of a colony needs to be sealed off in such a way that the nest will be undetectable from the outside in order to protect it from predators. As such, sick ants, or ones who are older, will apparently volunteer to perform the task of staying outside the nest at night. Once the rest of the ants are inside, the sacrificial ants will seal up and hide the entrance and will usually end up dying from being left outside. Even when researchers have collected the sacrificial ants and taken care of them, they usually die soon anyway, which is why it is thought that generally older or sick ants are chosen or volunteer for this task. In another example, honeybees will willingly explode their own penises and subsequently die just for a chance to pass on their genes. They will also willingly remove themselves from a hive if they know they're infected with a disease that could potentially hurt other bees. Japanese honeybees, when defending against the giant Asian hornet, will intentionally group together and bull the invader. Once they've surrounded the hornet, they will decouple their wings internally and then beat their muscles vigorously, similar to how honeybees heat their hives despite being cold-blooded. In this case, the heat in the center of the ball, combined with the carbon dioxide, becomes intense enough to kill the hornet, which is the bee's only defense against it. Unfortunately, bees near the hornet and the ball may also die as a result, but do so apparently willingly for the good of the hive. Again, some people would classify this as suicide, but others would classify it as a form of altruistic behavior typical of a hive-orientated species. Indeed, whether to classify an animal's action as suicide is almost as contentious as the issue of whether animals possess the cognitive function to understand it as a concept. Do bees at the center of this heat ball understand that their actions may result in their death, or do they simply do it as the introduction of the invader triggers certain innate actions built into their brains without any real conscious or abstract thought? In short, though we're aware of numerous cases in which animals have seemingly intentionally taken their own lives, we simply don't know whether the animals understood the ramifications of their actions or were just reacting to environmental triggers without giving it much thought. And now for some bonus facts. In yet another case of apparent suicide attempts, certain rats have been observed to become unusually attracted to the scent of cat urine, a scent they'd usually avoid like the plague. Instead, the rat becomes intensely sexually attracted to it. Needless to say, this makes it much more likely that the rat will be eaten by a cat. So, is this out of intentional suicide? Well, it turns out that's not the case at all. This behavior is observed in rats that have been infected by Toxoplasma gondii, whose preferred host is cats. Interestingly, though far from conclusive, research conducted by the Maryland School of Medicine found that women infected with this same parasite were 1.5 times more likely to attempt suicide. You can learn more about this in a video we made called "The Parasite That Could Be Living Inside You Right Now." It's linked to in the description below. And now for another bonus fact. Spinochordoides tellini, a type of parasitic worm, when it infects grasshoppers and crickets, is capable of inducing them to leap to their deaths into water. This is where the matured worm can breed. And now for another bonus fact. About 4 men will commit suicide for every 1 woman that does the same. Given this, you'd perhaps expect that men are much more likely to try to kill themselves than women, but in fact this isn't the case at all. In fact, nearly 3 times as many women as men will attempt to kill themselves. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. I'd also like to take this time to thank our patrons on Patreon. Their support helps make this channel possible and making our daily videos. If you'd like to join them in supporting us, please do consider heading over to patreon.com/TodayIFoundOut. And we've got loads of great perks lined up for people who do support us. So help is much appreciated. That's patreon.com/TodayIFoundOut. And thank you for watching.
So you're still here, still watching this video. Maybe you just let it run and you're not actually there anymore. Whatever the case, if you're listening to this, I think you should go check out my new channel. It's called Biographics. It is biographies of notable historic figures as well as present day people. Let me give you some examples. We got the Queen of England, Vladimir Putin. Those just 2 people on the world stage. We've also got Elon Musk coming up, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Even the first serial killer, H.H. Holmes, maybe just H.H. Holmes. We look at all sorts of people, longer form, about 20 minutes long, diving into the story of their lives in a similar style to this. It's Biographics. If you like this channel, if you like my other stuff, you're gonna like this as well. Biographics, there is a link in the description below. Do go check it out and please do subscribe.